Good evening, my name is Michel Loreto. I am a reporter from Globo TV and I'm here to be the mediator for this conversation on mothers conciliating their work with work, children, and I will call Marina Caruso. She is editor of Marie Claire, Brazil. She is pregnant. So, also with us today, Sonia Regina Hess Souza. She is chairman and CEO of Dudalina. Welcome. Luiza Masagão Menezes, Director of Marketing, Grand Hyatt São Paulo. Director of Marketing, Sylvio Rocha. He graduated in business administration and he is owner of CanalAzul, partner at CanalAzul, former head HSBC Securities Services Latin America, and also Raquel Schettino. Raquel is 36 years old, married, 2 children, and she has a very good story. She had one child after the other, she was telling us, and she is co-founder of Asta, working with low-income communities in Rio de Janeiro. I will begin. So, since they say that those who are pregnant come first, okay, I'll talk to you first, Marina. Marina, you are pregnant, 8 months, 37 weeks. In the next 2-3 weeks, anything can happen. It's my first son. I took a long time to decide to be a mother because I am very workaholic. Career was always a concern, and for the first time I have been thinking how to conciliate both things. I almost had prejudice saying, when people said, oh, I have to leave earlier, going to school, and now I have another point of view. So I have thought a lot about this now, not only because I'm pregnant, not only because Marie Claire is a women's magazine and is concerned with women's rights, but we have a new situation in our country with the new law for household helpers, maids. So I'm very happy to be here. Do you have any idea of how you will do? If I could, I would share with my husband. That's one of the things I would like to talk about. I believe we should have also father's leave, but fortunately, although I'm a journalist, I have some flexibility to be with my child in the morning, go to the newspaper, come back at night, and I have a good helper that does everything, so it's going to be with trial and error. Sonia, you were telling us that 80% are women in your company, and once in a while you have a lot of women pregnant at the same time. How do you handle this? Good afternoon. First, I'm from a family where my mother had 16 children, and she started the company. My father was a poet. I joked that my father would make children and poems. So, my mother was an entrepreneur. I saw my mother pregnant for many years. I'm the 6th daughter. And so we have 1,800 women in the company. Many women, and these women will become pregnant. So we have some programs to take care of these women. One of them is Mother Dudalina. We take care since she becomes pregnant. She has an angel, which is another woman who already became pregnant in the past, so she takes care of this employee. Then we have one day with the employee and her husband, with psychologist and doctor, to show to them how their life will change. Then they take the baby to show to her friends. So we have to take care of this woman. a woman who is pregnant. While she's working with us, we have to take care of her. And we employ a lot of women. We're an apparel company. Most of our employees are women. Now I'd like to talk to Luiza. Luiza has a daughter. She's 4 years old, but she has an interesting story. She was promoted in her other job when she was pregnant. Tell us. Oh, it was very interesting. Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity. It's a great pleasure to be here. I was promoted to a leadership executive position when I was pregnant, 7 months or 6.5 months. And it was a surprise to me because I was substituting someone who was on maternity leave, and the person didn't come back. And I imagined that I would not be promoted. I was pregnant too. That when I came back, maybe this could happen. And the company gave me the opportunity, I got the promotion, and I took on the responsibility, because one thing is substituting someone, another is truly having the position. And I pregnant on maternity leave, and I said, gee, now I have two great responsibilities. I had this great opportunity in my career, and this moment, marvelous moment, the birth of my daughter. And I had to conciliate these two things. And it was very important for me. I believe that the company's support was very good. Like Sonia said, the company helping you so the mother can take care of her child. This is very important. And also at the same time, continue with a career. Hyatt gives you some resources. The Grand Hyatt gives resources to us for maternity leave. For example, when you come back, it's important to have this support on the part of the company. Here, we do a lot of this. So, flexibility. The company understands the mother's needs and allowing the mother to come back gradually, and if she has another project or what she actually needs, they're always alert to this. Time, needs. So if the company doesn't give you this support, the woman will feel insecure. So it's very important to understand this. And I had this support, and this really helped me, made things easier. Sylvio, you're the only man talking to us. Good afternoon. What is it like to be a father, the role of the father? Because we have maternity leave, 4 months, some companies give 6 months, and the father has 5 days only to stay with the child. So, when the child is born, the support that the father gives to the mother. Good afternoon. I believe that 5 days is a period when you're not sure about things. There won't be much help from him. What I'd like to say, it was very interesting to be invited to be here. What is happening here in this forum, the things that you have already obtained in the labor market and a better understanding, all the victories you have had, better conditions in the labor market, this is here to stay and will continue. What I'd like to say as something important is how the father or the son or the companion will behave, not only in the 5 days or in the first month or second month, in the first year or in the third year or fifth year, because I believe that we must think about the father's role. The father sometimes believes he doesn't have to participate, but it's a very important time until the age of 10 to have a link affection. It's not the number of hours, but the quality of these hours that you spend with your son or daughter. In my experience with 3 children, I worked, I was an executive in the financial market, I had to travel. I had very little time, but it's an issue of priority. if you believe that having a child is not a priority, and if you don't take on this responsibility that you will have to give up other things to be with your children, you're not making a good decision. So, going back to your question, these 5 days are very good, but it's very little. We have to continue and see the commitment we have. Well, to conclude this part, we can go back to Sylvio's part. Raquel, please talk about having one child after another. You have a 4-year-old daughter, now a 3-year-old daughter. Good afternoon. It's a great pleasure to be here and sharing with you I remember one was born, then the next year, I feel tired when I think of how I had 2 children in a room. Yes, but you can do it, you can do it. And Asta, I founded this company. This Asta network is there to generate income for low-income women. They have a lot of children and they can't work. When it came my turn to be a mother after starting Asta, I said, gee, how can these women do this? Because the majority at the base of the pyramid are women with 5, 6, 8, 10 children, and there's no way they can have a job. But they were able through the Asta network. I will talk about our network, our work, but I'm an entrepreneur, and after 1 month, 1 month after my son was born, I would take him to work, signing contracts, because if we stopped, the company would stop. It was me and a partner at the time, so we had to rush. And when I went to the doctor to take the pill, I was pregnant again. I was already pregnant. And after a year, I would take 2 children to work. But today, Sophia is 3 years old, Mateus is 4 years old. They stay in school all day long, so everything came out right, but it was not easy. I'm a born interpreter, and this helped me a lot to really be able to do everything. I'd like to ask you, for those who have been through this, do you believe it's very difficult to conciliate children, home, with work? Is it impossible? Is it difficult? In reality, I did not have daughters. My husband had 3 daughters. They came to live with me when they were young, and today I have grandchildren. Yes, I believe grandmothers should also have maternity leave. Who is a grandmother? Isn't it wonderful to be a grandmother? It's the best thing in the world. So today I have to do everything. I do anything for my grandchildren to come to visit me. We have a large family. So I was a mother, not being really a mother. So since my mother also took care of this, it's not easy when you are the daughter of a mother who had many children. So she gave me a very strong, a good example, and therefore you feel inspired. I'm inspired by my mother. I have 15 partners, brothers, 11 are men, and 4 sisters. We're all partners in the company. And as you said, yes, in the end, everything comes out fine. You're taking some time to take another, okay? Maybe in 2 years' time, the next. I believe, I should say it's not easy. It's not easy. I believe that we women, we can have many roles at the same time. We're able to do this. We manage many things at the same time. We are multitask, but it's very possible and very gratifying. And I'm very happy to be a mother and also a professional. I feel as someone who is successful, someone who is able to really achieve things. Sylvio said something that is very important. He talked about the quality. I don't focus on the time, but the quality. I focus on the quality of the things I do with my daughter, with my husband, and also my work. And I try to spread this in the company. It's not the amount of time that they stay in the hotel, but how much they are engaged when they're here, and also at home. The quality of the time. When I'm with her, I'm 100% with her, dedicated to her. And I try to divide my day in this way. So you have to manage your time, yes, that's a given, and you have to really be 100% present in what you're doing. When I'm working 100%. When I'm with my daughter, I'm 100% with her. And it is possible, yes, very possible. If you can't manage, you will be frustrated. You have to manage. If you try to do everything and you don't have focus, you will be frustrated. You have to be very objective, you have to have a lot of focus, and it's possible. Sylvio, do you think that companies in Brazil have prejudice when women have become pregnant? Yes, of course. We have a long way to go because everyone wants to have a family. I believe there is a journey ahead of us in this direction. We were talking, Marina, about paternity leave in other countries, and it's very different from Brazil. Yes, you're right. I did my homework. I found some data, although I did some research, and I found some data that shocked me. Harvard made a study with graduates in business administration. That was in the year 1999-2000, and they did a follow-up of the students that go to work. 50% were women, 50% were men. After 8 years, for example, women had only 17% of the men had dropped out, and 60% of the women had dropped out of the labor market. So I believe that if men do their part, this could facilitate, share the duties. I know it's at a utopia because the Brazilian social security system would not be able to handle this, but there's data from other countries. Let me see if I can find it here. Let's see. In Germany, 12 to 14 months leave, 77% compensation guaranteed. The father can take a leave for 3 years without compensation. With compensation, it's not Social Security that pays, the companies pay. And I talked to Minister Eleonora Minicucci of Women's Rights. She said there is a law in Congress for 1 month paternity leave, but this would have to be agreed upon by companies and governments. For example, you who are CEOs, is this possible? Initially, although this will represent a high cost, in the long term, wouldn't the benefits be good? Because the father will want to stay more time in that company. The mother will want her husband to stay in the company. I'd like to hear your opinion. Sonia? My opinion and your opinion? Of course, this is not a small change. For example, 1 month paternity leave. But I believe that these are evolutions we will see in our society. I see it a lot in our company, young women, young men, until the age of 30, who are living together, who are getting married. Today, men are sharing things with women. This day I had a group of women and I said, do you have to go home and cook dinner? And they said, no, Sonia, they cook for us. But I began to ask questions and I saw that there was a balance in these couples, and this is very interesting, a balance, because it becomes easier. And sometimes this 1 month paternity leave will help this evolution. Its evolution, of course, the cost will be high for companies, there is no doubt as to that, but people will have children at this age, so we will have to adapt to this. It's not something that we are supporting, but if it happens, we have to adapt to it. I believe that today men want to be more present. They want to be close to their children. Men are much more present. They're more engaged. I see, for example, in my daughter's school, I see the fathers present in the activities, in the meetings, with the teachers, more interested. I see my husband participating in my daughter's activities, so there is much more support today. I don't believe that we're truly sharing as we could, because women still have a longer day and it would help to share more. I believe we have our activities at work and at home. I believe we work more than men. Men help. Now women have the responsibility, and this makes a big difference, a great difference, helping and being responsible. I believe this culture should change. Men should be as responsible as women for the activities at home, and not only help women. This would facilitate a lot, because the burden is not only doing but also being responsible. But while we don't have paternity leave, companies can facilitate maternity leave, can help women so they will not have to stop working. I see some women who are stopping. Some friends of mine stopped working, so this is a shock to me. Women who, and these are not few, because they're busy, they can't, and in the end they decide to take care of the children. Then the children grow up, and what will happen in these women's lives? Companies could facilitate this process. There are some tools for this. For example, in our Hotel Grand Hyatt, we give support. We have a network called Women Hyatt, where you have support to discuss issues linked to women's careers. So you can have support from other women who work at the hotel. There is a mentor, a coach, as in the case of Dudalina. It's important to know their expectations, help women to come back so they will not abandon their career. We have a case in my department, an employee who traveled a lot and she wanted to stop traveling, and we changed her position. She was a valuable employee. We didn't want to lose her just because she would not like to travel anymore. So she has a different position. We have another project for her, and she continues here. So there are tools that companies can use to facilitate this process while we wait for the paternity leave, and women have most of the burden. But we don't always see this at companies. A company that will give support, 6 months maternity leave. I remember that when this began, it was discussed whether women would stop working, whether women would stop to develop. The company where I work, they give 6 months maternity leave, and I noticed a difference in the people when they come back to work, especially those who have twins and have to come back to work. You come back, better prepared, because when you see a child with 4 months, in 2 months the children develop, and I've seen this being discussed, and I don't see in my company a woman leaving or losing her position or being less productive just because she took 2 extra months. So this is very good. Some people can switch jobs. Now I'd like Raquel to talk about the women who have a lot of children and don't have this option of stopping and to work. These women, since 2005, when we began our Asta network, our company really helps women to become entrepreneurs, to help their products to be accepted in the market. These women work in their communities, producing something they can produce in a brilliant way, but they don't have anyone to sell this product. And Asta exists for this. We discover channels to sell these products. So these 500 women produce products. We have 50 communities, and we help them to sell their products. Today, it's very possible, and you can see from indicators that these women work. They produce many products. The products get to the hands of large companies that work with gifts, because many times they use products, sub-products from these companies, and through their work they obtain income to take care of their children. Most of these women don't have husbands, so it's very good to see that even in this situation you give these women opportunities, and they're working. They take products and that are scrap in companies and transform them into gifts and other products, and this helps them very much. How could they get a job? They have no chance. So it's very nice to see this. We have indicators for 8 years showing how this has changed their lives. Okay, Sylvia. Okay, let's talk to Sylvio. Sylvio, you have 3 children, right? 12, 9, and 7 years of age. Would you do something differently in the support that you gave to your wife? Would you do something differently? It's a personal question. The decision to have children, I have a phrase that I read once that said, if you could classify the human species in groups, the only classification would be those who have children and those who don't. Men or women, whatever. In the end, it's the same. Now, people who had children and people who didn't have children, they have different points of view. So, I believe this is a truth. It's obvious that if you analyze, you could, for example, you know that when you had children you were less mature, you could have done things differently, but I believe that I'm very happy with what I did. Now, the 12-year-old is already busy, so if you don't participate as a father in your children's lives, it's no use thinking that you will become the owner of a company and then come back and recover the time lost. No. You will lose. You lose your chance. So it's very important in terms of companies. We know that companies have technologies. You can work at a distance. There are conference calls. These things are improving. And also parents, when they decide to have children, if they are not conscious of the importance of the role they have, it's no use. Now, like you mentioned, the quality. It's no use being with your son in the living room with you watching the ball game and him playing with the iPad. So when you're there, you have to interact. You need quality time. I talk to my friends. Many people don't notice this. don't perceive this. And when they wake up, the children are already 15 years old, and you have lost your opportunity to be with them. And Sylvio, also we discuss a lot the following. This concern on the part of the father is also the concern of the mother. Women are also concerned with this. Marina, for example, you will soon have a child. The other day, I don't know if other women went through this. When we're pregnant, sometimes we're a little slower, and then we accelerate again. And on one of these occasions, when I was a little slow, as I say, I went to talk to the editor of a magazine, and I said, gee, I'm feeling slow. I'm used to running. And she said, you know what the advantage is? When you become a mother, you will focus your time in a much better way. Because, for example, when you have a child, you will go home. And this happens to fathers too. Maybe the focus, the fathers will have more focus. It's so good to be at home, to be with the children. And also when you're not at home, you also want to focus more on your work to be more efficient. I'd like to mention another situation today. I'm divorced, so with the number of hours I have with my children, I have less hours with my children. And I believe that, fortunately or unfortunately, this is a reality. If you don't do it well done, you will have even less time with your children. So yes, what you're saying is true. And I can even talk about my experience. My mother, I was born when my mother was 16. I'm 33, she's 49. And my father was 19 years old when I was born. And my mother was able to study with her family's help, and she went to the university. My grandmother would take me to the university where she could breastfeed me. She breastfed me during the lunch break at the university, and for me this is an example, a great example. Yes, women can focus on their career, have their children, and my mother is the most active woman I've ever seen in my life. And she does many things at the same time. And I have this wonderful example. I admire her very much. She always tells me, okay, you have to have your children. You can't think too much about this. It'll work out all right. My mother had help from my grandparents. She had a helper at home, but we will have less and less of this. We know that. So my children, your children, will not have this support, a helper in the home and grandparents. So the laws are changing for helpers. Does everyone have a helper at home? What would it be like without a helper at home helping you? I believe it's still impossible. Does anyone think differently? Two said it's possible without a helper, without a maid at home? Yes, with maybe with a mother-in-law or with your mother helping, or a company that will allow us to work part-time. Our profession, for example, we work 8-9 hours a day, and sometimes 10-12 hours a day. So it would be difficult to do this. I don't know if this would be possible. If I could work part-time and earn half my salary and spend half of the time with my son, that's a possibility. Yes, some professions like ours, you don't, for example, when you work with articles, when you're in the street as a reporter, you don't have fixed hours. Many times I am working. I work until 2 p.m., but sometimes I stay until 8 p.m. So hotels never close. Hotels work 24 hours a day, 24 by 7. Although I work in sales, hotels are very dynamic companies, and things happen, many events, and my husband has flexible hours. he works flexible hours. I believe this issue of having support is very important. I had support. I got married. I waited for 5 years to have my daughter. It was all planned. I waited until we had a more organized financial situation. But this is something that happens in Brazil. In the US, you don't see this structure, so we will have to adapt as time goes by. We will have to keep our children in school maybe all day long, and more nurseries. We will have to use nurseries. We will have to change our routines in the future, different routines, and I believe it's an issue of adapting. We have to adapt ourselves. So we have to adapt. Now, how do you think that companies can help? Since we have had helpers in the home, we have had maids in the home, and we will have less and less because the law has changed. It will be more difficult to have a helper in the home. We're a small company, 20 employees, and we work with goals. Every department has its indicators and goals, so we have tasks. For example, if my daughter gets sick, I work at home. I don't have a helper. And that day, if I work less, I will have to work during the night to reach my goals. And we have 12 employees that are women with children in the company. It has worked very well. It's a small company, but the commitment with the goals and tasks and focus. Yes, after we become mothers, we become even more efficient professionals because we're obliged. Time is more than money for us. Time is everything for us. So it's an extra stimulus for us to become an even better professional because we use every opportunity we have to carry out our tasks. So I support this. You have to be very productive and things will come out right. Because some people stay long hours in the company, have coffee all the time, but did they carry out their tasks? So you have to be more productive. Everything is possible. Even without children, I can talk about my industry. We hear very little about productivity. So being engaged, being committed. So, for example, engaged employee seems to be the one that works long hours, not the one that is more productive, more efficient. This has to change. Yes, this has to change. We see a lot of this in Brazil. There's this idea of working long hours, but we should change. We have to be productive and not work 15 hours a day. In our case, it's an industry, it's a plant. We have 2 shifts. One shift begins at 5 a.m. until 2 p.m. and from after 2 p.m. we have another shift until 11 p.m. And we have been working together with the labor ministry. We have half an hour for lunch so these women don't have to work on Saturdays. Otherwise, they would have to work on Saturdays too. So we have this agreement because I believe it's fair for women to have Saturdays and Sundays free to take care of their families and having some time for them. And when they work in the one or the other shift, they can still be more hours, they can stay with their families. Well, this is industry. There's not much we can do. For example, those who are seamstresses, they're important. If one person is missing, you have a problem. So we have an interesting profit distribution program. We distribute 12% of our profit. Last year we paid 6 extra wages to our employees. So Puras, also our supplier Sodexo, they supply meals. They do a beautiful job. So these are the ways that we found for people to be committed with the company. Those who work with production, it's different from services. In production, you can't. You have to produce an X amount of items per day per plant. We have 6 plants. We have nurseries close by. We take care to have a nursery for these mothers to take their children. Last year, one of our plants, they were going to change, and the nursery was very old, and we said, no, our institute will donate everything. We want a first-class, first-world nursery. So those who work with industry don't have very much flexibility. We have to help people take care of them as much as we can. Yes, there's the real world and the ideal world. So in most companies, we don't see this. Nurseries, respect for women, sometimes we don't see this. To give women free time so they will be able to produce more. When women feel better with their child at home and with a nursery, they will produce more. So this distance between the ideal world and the real world is here. And also, people adapt. For example, in the cities where we have plants, the nurseries open at 4 a.m. because they will receive these mothers bringing their children. And every profession has its own needs. Yes, hotels or journalism industry. Now, this distance between the ideal world and the real world, do you believe that it's a long journey? Is it a great distance, Marina? From what I see from our readers, yes, there's a lot to do. There's a great desire to go in this direction to the ideal world, but there's a long journey to go. I believe companies should do their part, maybe facilitate more. I began to read more because of this new law for helpers. And I read about the new feminists, those who abandoned their jobs and went back home. And I said, I wonder if this is an option. I can't imagine leaving my work. I love my work. And then I found some curious data in the New York Times. It said that men who participated more in the children's education, so they are going home. So we want to see more men cooking, ironing clothes, and there was data from a British university saying that these men that participated more at home were those who made less sex. Though I don't want that kind of man. These had less sexual relations with their wives, those who helped at home. I don't want that. Sylvio, what's your opinion? You're the only man here. Well, it's not easy. Okay, you have the ball. It's not easy because if men are having less sexual relations, that's not good. No, I believe that the father should understand his role. So this is a concept. It's no use the company evolving. We have examples that were mentioned, technology evolving, and things not changing at home. So the old model, the old role of the father no longer exists. Fathers have to help more at home, and it's more than this. It's not only bringing the money home and then turning on the TV and drinking beer. It's much more. There's much more involved in being a father and participating. So for me, this is a topic that should be discussed and is important. Do you notice, for example, the women who have a lot of children who really need to work because sometimes they support the family? Do you notice men helping these women? Unfortunately, it's even worse in this class because some of these women don't even have husbands. No, they don't help. Before starting Asta, I lived in Switzerland. I worked in a multinational company, and I believe that it's there in Switzerland. It's very good. The mother decided to have a child. The family decided to have a child, and in Switzerland, women work for 40% and they're 60%. This doesn't exist here. So when the mother works, the father stays at home with the child. So they want to continue with their jobs, their work, but their culture, the culture of European men is different since they don't have helpers. It's marvelous to see this because the fathers are conscious of their role. You said that today we have the responsibility and they help. In Switzerland, it's shared. The responsibility belongs to both. So this is very good. And then the fathers help in taking care of the children, and we know that it's much better balanced than in Brazil. So now we will open to the audience. Let's begin our Q&A session. Do we have questions from the audience? Please raise your hand and we will take you a microphone. No questions? Oh, we have one here. I would like to know if our legislation allows you to work less hours with a lower salary. So women can opt, instead of working all day long, can they work part-time and earn less? Does the legislation allow this? As far as I know, it's not allowed in the legislation. Unfortunately, our labor legislation is very archaic, and we need an urgent reform. And, for example, like you mentioned in Switzerland, women working during one day and men staying at home. Our legislation is not flexible. We have 6 plants. Each plant has a different union, a different law. It's very complex in Brazil, unfortunately. It could be much easier for everybody. Now, the labor laws are 57 years old. Imagine labor laws that are 57 years old. Women didn't even work at that time. Women didn't help to write these laws. Probably women never participated in writing these laws. So we need a reform. The country needs many reforms. One of them is the labor reform, and it's urgent. Like you said, it will help not only the employee but also the company. Yes, because when these labor laws were enacted, the employees were enemies of the employer. Today it's different. They're not enemies, employers and employees. We're building things together. In our company, everyone is important. No one is more important than the other. We all need each other. So it's interesting when we distribute the PPR, for example, on a certain time, we have someone who does cleaning at the office, and she came to my desk and she said, Mrs. Sonia, can I plant some pepper and things here? And I said, why? And she said, because this PPR is so good, so good. I just built extra rooms in my house. So you have inclusion. People are happy, but all of this, last week I went to sign a pile of documents this high. So the law doesn't facilitate things. Brazil should fight to facilitate the lives of employers and employees. Any other questions? My name is Mary. I work with children's education, and my question is, for example, having a child, how does this help women to become executives? Is this stopping women from wanting this position? It's not my area, but I will tell you as a journalist, I saw that of the 500 CEOs of large companies in Fortune companies, only 5% are women, so it hasn't been helping. I always ask a question. Do women want to have children? Because you have the choice. You can choose not to have children. I'd like to ask the audience, how many of your grandmothers worked, had a job? How many grandmothers worked, had a job? Few. How many mothers worked? How many of your mothers worked? Yes. Nowadays, we all work, so it's a different world. We're building this in a different way. And also, you have to ask this woman, does she want to be a CEO? I, as a CEO, I can say frankly, today I want, but there are some days when I want to say bye-bye. So there are days when things aren't easy. I have 15 partners who are brothers and sisters. Some days I feel like staying at home playing with my grandchildren. And sometimes I go there real early to say, gee, come on, let's go. Well, I'm not a CEO, but I was promoted to become a director when I was pregnant. And on our side, I see some women saying, gee, I wouldn't like to have your position. You travel a lot. Oh, you have to go to many events, many meetings. Many women say this to me. Now, I believe it's an issue of how you really transmit this. We have to show that there is the good side. It depends on the objectives of each person. There are other professions too. There are other types of labor work apart from being a CEO or a director level job without having to stay home. Sylvio, I agree. Oh, we have an evolution. You said 5%. 10 years ago, it was 1% of the Fortune 500 companies. So there's more opportunity today, much more opportunity. And the issue is, do you want this? Do women want this? It's because I believe that women have characteristics that are different from those of men. And today, the market values some characteristics that women have and that men will never have. So women have much more opportunity. But if you look at legislation, the activities, and what people value in professionals, women have characteristics that men don't have. So, but everyone has this option to become a CEO or not. I, as the founder of a company after I had children, I decided to take care of only a part of the company. I used to take care of everything. So we create products, we sell products, we take care of the vendors. So I decided to take care only of one part, sales, after I became a mother. Because today my priority is to really take care of both things. We have another question. Good afternoon. It's a question more for Sonia. So in your company, you mentioned that 80% of the employees are women. And when they become pregnant, you said you have a lot of women pregnant at the same time. I believe right now we have 60 or 80 women who are pregnant. How do you deal with this in your apparel plant? You said it's a production plant. It's a production line. You can't have people missing. So how do you deal with this? Also in other companies, how do you deal with this maternity leave? Because whether you want to or not, this has a financial impact. Dudalina is 56 years old, so it has many children and children's children working there. many daughters of mothers who work there. So you have to adapt yourself. So you have to train more people to take their places, those who are pregnant. Since we're very flexible, we don't have an assembly line, a production line. So we adapt. People come back. We train more people to substitute them, and they come back. Sometimes the baby is close in the company for breastfeeding after the maternity leave. This is what we do. Like you said, this is what we have: two things, the ideal world and the real world. So we have to look at the real world too. Any other questions? Here at the front we have a question. Please rise. She will give you the microphone. My name is Adriana. I'm from Bebê Company. Are there any studies on this generation of children who stay all day long at school? So they are in school all day long, full of activities, and they spend very little time with the father and the mother. For example, I work all day, my husband too. We only see our children at night. Is there any study talking about how about this generation and how they will see their parents in the future? Any studies? What's your name? Adriana. Please, your experience. How do you feel when you arrive at home? Yes, they miss us. I stay, for example, I arrive at home at 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. and they're anxious. They want to see us. And I have two children. One is 7 years old, the other is 4 years old. And now there are times when they're even more childish. They want more attention from us. They miss us. So sometimes I police myself and I ask myself, how will things be in the future? I remember that I had images of my mother. My mother didn't work, and I remember her, and now I don't know if it will be the same with my children, because they spend all day long. They spend their day at school, sports, many activities. But I'd like to know, is there any study? Has anyone done research? For example, when they get older, how will they recover this? Will this have an effect on them, this absence? For example, in the future, how will they think about this? Today, this generation has parents that are absent from their lives. Can I say something? Yes, the issue of quality, Sylvio. Yes, exactly, quality. Yes, like in Switzerland, they don't have helpers, so the children stay at school. Here, we're going through a transformation because now there will be less helpers with the new law. They were, so the country now, these helpers will have different jobs. They will go maybe to the university. So in the past we had helpers at home, but this won't happen in the future. For example, in other countries they have good schools, good buses to pick up the children. We're going through a transformation. Maybe we won't see this in our generation in Brazil, but it will definitely happen. So the quality of the time is important, not the number of hours, but the quality of the time. What you teach them, right? Yes, what you teach them. I believe that in terms of memories, my husband and I, we have times when I stay with the children and times when he stays. Every night I put my daughter to sleep. I tell her a story. I can be tired, but I tell her a story. I sing to her. This is very important for her, and she likes this very much. And one day at school, she had to write about her mother. She said, I like my mother because she tells me stories, she puts me to sleep, she sings. So this is important for her. My husband takes her to school, they walk, he plays, he jokes with. So short periods but very intense, and this certainly will be in her memory. Yes, when we decide to have children, we can't arrive at home and sleep on the sofa. So just to conclude, any other questions? In reality, I'm French. I work in the French consulate in São Paulo, and I just wanted to answer this question. I don't have a study, but my generation in France, there's this issue of women who began to work more and more in the last 20 years, but helpers. No one that I know of ever had a helper in France when I was young. None of my friends had helpers at home, maids, and also at school. I always studied all day long. My parents too, in school all day long. And so this is the situation. So until my parents' generation, it was the mother who took care of the children at night. But for 30 years we don't have this. And I can say that most of my friends, that we have very strong memories of our childhood. I have strong memories of my parents during my childhood, even though I saw them only at night. We used to arrive home at the same time, almost at the same time, and we saw them every single day. Although it was a short period for me, it was very valuable. I have good memories of this, so I don't remember spending most of my time far from my family. So Adriana, this is for you, okay. And I'd like to ask about paternity leave. I didn't understand. Does it exist in Brazil or not? Yes, 5 days. Yes. So if your son is born on Friday, your husband will only have Monday and Tuesday off. Yes, also, same with marriage, 5 days, 5 consecutive days. So getting married and having children for men is the same thing in terms of leave. Any other questions? Good afternoon. My name is Milena. I am manager of the legal department at a multinational company. I'd like to ask Sylvio, how do you see when we become mothers, we have to impose certain things, and sometimes managers set up a meeting with you at 7:30. You're invited to a meeting at 7:30. You have to be available from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. and then they set up a meeting at 7:30. And sometimes we say, look, I can come tomorrow, but we know the topics that are urgent. We can establish priorities. When we become mothers, we focus more on our work, but sometimes I see that we see these things, and I impose myself. I say, look, I'm available. If it's very urgent, okay, I will stay until 7:30 p.m., or we can set up a meeting another day. How do you see this attitude? Being a man, you're on the right track. Now, a serious company that has serious managers, well-trained managers that know how to work with a team, they can do this maybe or once or only twice because of something that is very urgent. But these things are valid for them. If they can't manage their work in the normal working hours, there must be something wrong. So I believe that you're doing what I would do. It's correct. We have to be reasonable. Many times, it's like we said, sometimes we feel guilty of leaving the company at 5:30. Most of us, we work in the same company. We can't leave because we have management positions. But whenever possible, we stay 1 or 2 extra hours and then we go home and then we begin to take care of our children. And sometimes we find prejudice. Sometimes there is prejudice. And sometimes we say, look, today I will have to arrive a little later because I have to take my child to a pediatrician. How do men see this? Has it become more common? Are men accepting this? Are they accepting this more easily? I believe that for us it hasn't been easy. Women without children have even more prejudice. I noticed this. And sometimes they say, is she really going to take her son to the pediatrician? And then you have to, like I mentioned about my mother, although I was born when they were very young, they got divorced. I was almost 3 years old, and when I became sick and someone had to pick me up at school, it wasn't only my mother. My father also went to pick me up. If my father was closer, he would go and pick me up. He's a dentist, he's a surgeon. But if he could, he would go to pick me up. Yes, you have to. Yes, fathers have to participate. Yes, we feel more guilty, yes, because people don't see this. Well, yes, I feel guilty too, but you have to do it. You have to have this balance. You have to take your child to the pediatrician. You have to go to the school's meetings. There are days when you will stay in the company from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m., but there are days when you have to leave earlier. There are limits. You can't, there are times when you can't manage both things. Well, I believe that we talked a lot about those who already have children. I don't have children, and I have thought a lot about this. My name is Anísia from Empreendedorismo Rosa, and the contact that I have with women. My partner has 4 children, and I used to think that it wouldn't be possible for me to have children. I'd like to ask the beautiful Marina, for example, when did this happen by chance? How did you decide? My husband doesn't want to have children, and he thinks that I'm going to get pregnant without telling him. But I'd like to know, when did you decide? How does it work? How old are you? 34. So I'm 34. So there's a time when if you don't have children, it's over. So I decided, when the gynecologist said, look, if you don't have children now, you'll never have them until 30. So rush. It gets more and more difficult. After you're 30, it becomes more and more difficult. And before this, I didn't want to. Then I wanted. My husband didn't want. But we had been trying for a year and a half, and I'm ready. Yes, because I deal in a different way with my work today. These guilts, maternity, yes. So it's possible. You have. It brought a stability, yes, many factors. And also time. If I could wait until I was 40, I would, but it was risky. Anyone else? Well, going in the other direction, I don't believe there's a right age or the right time. No. I had my daughter when I was 40. She's a year and a half old. And the only thing you have to be sure of is that it's going to change your life. It's going to become even better here. It's a joy to get home. Yes, I work in a multinational company. It's not easy to balance things, but your priorities change. I had a beautiful career. For example, there will be a course in the U.S., and I let them invite someone else to go to the U.S. for a course. And I know I continued to be active. Was it difficult to get pregnant? For me, it was very difficult. For me, no. It depends on the woman. When I decided in 2 months I became pregnant and I didn't have any problems. And so it depends on the woman, the relationship, but there's not a right time, a right age. The only thing is that things will change. It's going to be beautiful. Fantastic. Another question here. I'd like to say something to her. I'm 36-year-old. I am pregnant, and my gynecologist told me, my friend, if you want to get pregnant, it's now. Because if you try later on, it'll take more than a year. So I arrived home and I said, look, I decided to have a child. In 1 month, I got pregnant, and it was total chaos. He wasn't prepared, and I was one of those executives that said, I'll never have a child. I used to work. I was a workaholic. And then I told the people at the company, said, what? You did that? Today, things are easier, but there's the right time. Yes, there's the right time to have a child. Let me tell you something interesting. I work with recruiting and selection for executives, and this idea of never wanting to have children, 80% of my clients tell me, many companies say we don't want women candidates because women get pregnant, we want to hire men. But I even talked to my partner, and we're one of the sponsors. It's a change. We see so many women happy and well, but until now I see this, and our society has prejudice, and people say we want to hire a candidate who is a man. And I had at least 5 cases of women who were almost hired, and they were going to be directors, and they discovered they were pregnant, and they called me and they said, Leah, I don't want to become a director because I'm pregnant. And I had 2 cases of U.S. companies that said, but Leah, no problem. We will hire a woman who is pregnant in Brazil. No problem. Because for Brazilians, if you're pregnant, forget it. You won't get the job. And in the U.S. it's different. So Brazilian companies think this way. So theory is beautiful, but practice, what I see, it's terrible. And clients, they look at me and they say, oh, Leah, what's going to happen? Will you be back in 1 month? And I believe that it depends on the company, it depends on the woman, because if you, for example, where I work, Globo television, for example, you saw Rosana Jatobá, who was pregnant, and now there's Eliana. In the past, they would not have anyone pregnant on television. And yes, she's here. Yes, but we have to fight. And what you said, there's a person who works with me who tried to get pregnant for 5 years. And she told her husband that she didn't want a treatment. She was 42 years old. She went to the doctor, and she said, I'm not even trying. And the doctor said, there's a small chance. And she was pregnant. Yes. It depends on the woman. Some women have to rush. No, it's not a question. My name is Esther from Warnari. Congratulations. But she said that in Brazil, pregnant women are not accepted, and in other countries they are. This has to do with legislation too. We have, in the U.S., for example, there is no protection for pregnant women. So it's easier to hire, fire. You can hire, fire. And here, you cannot fire a pregnant woman. So many people want to work pregnant, and here we can't even try. So legislation doesn't help. There in the U.S. you don't have maternity leave. You have 2 weeks. Yes, no vacation, nothing. It's more liberal. Yes, like Sonia said, our labor legislation is very obsolete, archaic. If you want to work less and earn less, you can't. You can't, for example, the law doesn't allow you to earn less. You can't go to another position and earn less. So, yes, we have to change things. Good afternoon. I work in a multinational company where most of the employees are men. It's Lafarge, it's a cement company, and I'm leading the diversity project. When you talk about evolution, that we're making progress, in our company we have a good example. 23% of leadership positions have women, and the group wants to get to 35% leadership positions occupied by women. I'm here to know more about this and to understand what actions we can take to get to this goal. I have a daughter who is a year and 4 months old. I'm 37 years old. I don't have a helper, I don't have a maid. My daughter stays in the nursery all day long, and I agree with Sylvio. When I arrive at home, I sit on the floor to be with her. After she goes to sleep, I look at my emails. But when I'm with her, today I left her in another city with my mother to be here. Yes, we can be flexible and continue working, continue delivering results, and it's possible. If it weren't possible, we wouldn't have this forum here today and tomorrow. Thank you. We have another 5 minutes for questions. Anyone else? Here at the front. Olá, meu nome é Jéssica, sou do México. A minha pergunta é: o que as empresas estão fazendo em termos de dar oportunidades de carreira e também poder continuar com a família? Vocês poderiam mencionar melhores práticas nas empresas? Sonia could answer. What are the best practices in Brazil? Maternity, career, what are the best practices? So, like Esther said, first, there's a legislation problem that is very complex. We have to truly fight to have a reform, change these laws. And companies, like we deal in our company, we have one way of dealing. Every company creates its way. You can't exclude women from the labor market. Women who are leaders are growing in number. Like you mentioned, multinationals. In each company, in every company, there are efforts for women to get to leadership positions. So we had a lot of focus on this area for women to develop, to grow inside companies, because this is important. The companies that understand that this balance is important, to have men and women in leadership positions, this will help the company itself. So today Brazil is evolving, and it's evolving rapidly. It's an issue of time. 5% CEOs in Fortune 500 companies, 17% in top management. In 2-3 years, we will see these numbers increase because companies are creating methodologies for women to develop more rapidly. At Hyatt in the US, we have 48% of managerial positions occupied by women, 36% outside the US, leadership positions. Here, 50% of the employees are women. In the executive committee, we have 25% of the positions occupied by women, leadership positions. And some of the practices, we have to give support to women. For example, the 2 women in the executive committee here have children, myself and a colleague. Some best practices are, we have a global network. It's on the intranet through LinkedIn, Women at Hyatt, that gives support, hints. We have events, we have opportunities to discuss practices and give mutual support, discussing career and some issues linked to women's work. In the U.S., it's growing, 7 chapters in the U.S., 4 in Asia. In Brazil, we don't because we have 1 single hotel, but we can participate through the intranet in this global network. There's an initiative to have a mentor, a coach. I can be the mentor or coach of someone who is pregnant and will go on maternity leave, and give support, give hints. In the U.S., the legislation is more flexible. It's easier for women to come back to work, working part-time. In Brazil, the labor legislation stops this. In the U.S., it's allowed and the company uses this. So this is something that the company supports. Also, it's important to talk to women when they come back to see what they want to do, and also flexible working hours. We'd like to close one more question. I work at bb.com. One thing we have heard a lot from mothers, how they feel guilty. And this topic is very strong. Guilt is mentioned a lot. And we're seeing this as being, and this has to do with the time mothers have to spend with their children. And it was mentioned here, quality time. And many mothers believe that in order to have quality time, they can't, they can't, for example, say no to their children. So have you seen this? For example, I spend very little time with my children, so I will never say no. I will only say yes. Does this happen, Raquel? I don't know about the majority. I'm very strict at home since I have twins. When my daughter, almost twins, sorry. When my daughter was born, my son was not even walking. So I need discipline. And they stay all day long at the nursery. But there's the time to play, the time to really take a bath, to go to bed, and there is no flexibility. When it's time to go to bed, they have to go to bed. And they understood this very well, since there are 2, they're almost twins. So it works very well. And I don't feel guilty now, because this is what I can do. I work to pay their school fees. So on Saturday, I spend the day playing with them, and I spend the day playing with them. When we have rules at work and we have rules at home, and it works. And children learn to really live by these rules. I'd like to thank you, all the participants in this conversation. It was very good. Yes, I learned a couple of things. Sonia was supposed to be here. She's a reporter. She had a problem. She asked me to substitute her, and she even joked. She said, "You will learn. Use this opportunity to learn." So, truly, for those who haven't had children, every time we delay this, I was telling Marina, we delay, and we believe we can wait a little more. And I was even reading one of these days Veja magazine, and the cover was Children, no thank you, on Veja magazine. And I told my boyfriend that for the first time in my life I was thinking of not having children, and it was a shock to him. He said, gee, I never expected this from you. It is something we have to discuss, and we have to discuss this inside the companies and require from politicians in Congress to change labor laws. Women must discuss this, men too, and takes this topic. I hope that this will be useful for us to take these issues to our companies, to our bosses, to think more about this, because it's very important, and in the end everyone will win. The employer, the employee, everyone will win. So I'd like to thank Marina, Caruso, Sonia, Regina, thank you Ana Luiza, Sylvio, Rocha, and Raquel Schettino. Thank you, and also the audience. Thank you.